Hello, thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
How many of you? 13.
In the summer of 2018, a cave in northern Thailand became the most watched place on Earth. The Tham Luang cave system in Chiang Rai province is one of the longest cave networks in Thailand, a deep, winding labyrinth of narrow passages and flooded chambers that stretches for miles into the mountain. In normal conditions, it is a place for experienced cavers only, dark and technically demanding and unforgiving of mistakes. In the monsoon season, when the rains come and the water rises, it becomes something else, a trap. On June 23, 2018, 12 boys from a youth football team called the Wild Boars and their 25-year-old assistant coach entered Tham Luang after practice. They had done this before. The cave was a local landmark, a place the boys knew and had explored in smaller groups. They went in the afternoon, planning to be back before dark. But the monsoon rains that year were early and heavy, and while they were inside the cave, the water rose, cutting off the entrance passage and sealing them in. For 9 days, nobody knew if they were alive. The search that followed became one of the largest rescue operations in modern history. Thai Navy SEALs, military divers, cave diving specialists flown in from Britain and Australia and elsewhere, engineers, water pumping crews, volunteers from across the country. Hundreds of people organized themselves around a single purpose: find the boys and then figure out how to get them out. The cave system was mapped and remapped. Pumps ran day and night to lower the water levels. Divers pushed deeper into the flooded passages, navigating in zero visibility with guide ropes and the absolute concentration of people who understand that a single mistake in confined underwater space cannot be corrected. On July 2nd, 9 days after the boys entered, British cave diving experts John Valanthan and Rick Stanton reached them. They found the 12 boys and their coach alive, huddled on a rocky shelf several kilometers into the cave, above the waterline in a small chamber the rescue teams had begun to call Pattaya Beach. The boys were weak, dehydrated, and frightened, but they were breathing. They had survived 9 days in the dark by drinking water that dripped from the cave walls and by staying calm under the guidance of their young coach, Ekapol Chanthawang, a former Buddhist monk who had led them in meditation to conserve their energy and manage their fear. The world, which had been following the search with the particular desperate attention that attaches itself to the survival of children, received the news of their discovery with something close to collective relief. But the relief was immediately qualified by the understanding of what came next. Finding them was one problem, getting them out was a completely different one, and in the judgment of many of the experts on the ground, it was a problem without a clean solution. The passage between the boys and the outside world was, in most places, completely flooded. In some sections, the passage narrowed to gaps barely wide enough for a human body. The water was cold and dark and moved with the pressure of the ongoing rains. Even the most experienced cave divers in the world described the route as among the most technically challenging they had ever navigated. For 12 boys, most of whom could not swim, with no diving experience, in a confined and flooded cave, the mathematics of survival seemed to many of the experts brutally unfavorable. The planning that followed was conducted against this backdrop of urgency and uncertainty, with the lives of 13 people, 12 children and one young man who had done nothing wrong except take his team on an adventure after practice, hanging on decisions that no one had ever been required to make before. Saman Kunan was 37 years old when the news broke about the boys in the cave. He was a former Thai Navy SEAL who had retired from active service and was working in security for Suvarnabhumi Airport in Bangkok. He was fit, experienced, and trained in precisely the kind of diving that the rescue required. He was also, by any official measure, under no obligation to be there. He was a civilian. This was not his assignment. Nobody called him and told him to come. He came anyway. He arrived at the cave site as a volunteer, one of many former and serving military personnel who had made their way to Chiang Rai in the days after the boys were found. He was accepted into the operation. His Navy SEAL training, his diving skills, his physical condition made him exactly the kind of person the rescue coordinators needed. He was assigned to one of the most critical and demanding roles in the entire operation, running oxygen tanks through the flooded passages to the chamber where the boys were waiting. The logistics of keeping 13 people alive several kilometers inside a flooded cave while the rescue plan was developed required a continuous supply of oxygen. The tanks were heavy and awkward, and the route to carry them was the same route that had taken experienced British divers hours to navigate. Tight passages, zero visibility, guide ropes that could not be lost without becoming disoriented in the dark water, the constant physical demand of moving through confined space under pressure. Saman made the journey repeatedly, pushing tanks through passages that barely admitted a human body, working in conditions that most trained divers would approach with extreme caution. He was one of dozens of people doing dangerous work during those days. The entire rescue operation was a collective act of extraordinary courage. Thai Navy SEALs who had stationed themselves with the boys and refused to leave until all of them were out, international cave diving specialists who navigated conditions they described as among the most technically demanding of their careers, engineers and volunteers who worked in water and mud and monsoon rain to keep the operation functioning. The rescue of the wild boars was not the work of one person. It was the work of hundreds. But what happened to Saman Kunan on the night of July 5, 2018, is its own story. He had completed his mission, delivering oxygen tanks to the chamber where the boys waited. He had made the outward journey and was returning through the flooded passages toward the cave entrance. At some point in that return journey, in the dark and cold water of Tham Luang, Saman Kunan lost consciousness. The cause, according to the subsequent investigation, was hypoxia, insufficient oxygen. His equipment, or the physical demands of the journey, had left him without enough air to complete the return. His dive partner, who was with him in the passage, could not revive him. He was brought to the surface, and emergency medical procedures were attempted for more than an hour. They did not succeed. Saman Kunan, who had not been asked to come, who had volunteered because 12 boys were trapped and he had skills that might help, died in the cave that he had entered to help others leave. He was the only person to die during the entire rescue operation. He left behind a wife, Waliporn, and a family who had known that the work was dangerous and had not asked him to stop. The rescue of the wild boars was completed on July 10, 2018. All 12 boys and their coach were brought out alive. The operation, which had seemed to many observers potentially catastrophic, was executed with a precision and care that the cave diving experts themselves described as close to miraculous. Each boy was sedated, fitted with a diving mask, and guided through the flooded passages by trained divers who had memorized the route. The operation took 3 days, conducted in stages, and it succeeded completely. The world celebrated.
The boys appeared on television, thin and smiling, wrapped in blankets, reunited with their families. Their coach, Ekapal, who had kept them alive in the dark for 9 days, was photographed with them. The international rescue team, the British cave divers, the Australian doctors, the American military advisors, the Thai SEALs were celebrated as heroes, which they were. Documentaries were made. A film was produced. The story of Tham Luang entered the permanent record of human resilience and cooperation. And at the center of all that celebration, there was a silence, a specific, shaped silence. The silence of a man who was not there to see the outcome of the thing he had given his life for. The Thai government awarded Saman Kunan the Knight Grand Cross of the Most Exalted Order of the White Elephant, one of Thailand's highest honors. He was given a full military funeral with the ceremony and dignity due a man who had died in service to others. The rescue operation was officially renamed in his honor. The boys and their families attended memorials in his name. His wife received the recognition and support of a grateful nation. These things matter. Recognition matters. The naming of what a person did and doing it with ceremony and public weight. This is how societies tell themselves and each other what they value, what kind of courage deserves to be remembered. Saman Kunan deserved every honor he received and more. But what stands most clearly in the record of what he did is not the honors. It is the simplicity of his choice. He was not ordered to be there. He was not in any formal chain of command that required his presence at Tham Luang. He saw a situation in which children were in danger, and he had skills that might help, and he drove from Bangkok to Chiang Rai and said, "I am here. What do you need me to do?" This is the most human thing. Not the heroism of soldiers trained for sacrifice, not the self-sacrifice of people who have taken oaths that anticipate it, but the ordinary heroism of a person who sees something wrong and has the ability to help and simply does. No drama, no announcement, no calculation of personal cost that outweighed the value of helping. Just, "I am here." There is a detail in Saman's story that is easy to overlook, but worth holding. In the days before he entered the cave on what would be his final mission, he had posted on his social media a message about the rescue effort. He wrote that he wanted to give the boys strength, that he was thinking of them, that he was there to help. It was the post of a man who understood the danger and had decided it was worth it, not recklessly, not without thought, but with the full awareness of someone who had spent years training for exactly this kind of situation and knew what the water in that cave could do. He knew. He went in anyway. The 12 boys of the Wild Boars football team are young men now. They have grown up in the years since 2018, attended school, moved through their lives in the ordinary and extraordinary ways that young people do. Some of them have spoken publicly about what happened in the cave and what it means to them. Some of them have become divers themselves. All of them carry the knowledge that a man they never met, who owed them nothing, entered a flooded mountain in the dark and did not come back out. They breathe because he breathed his last. That is a weight that cannot be put down. It is also, and this is the thing that makes Saman Kunan's story ultimately not a story of tragedy, but a story of something else, a gift freely given. He did not give his life because it was taken. He gave it in the way that the best human acts are given, voluntarily, without condition, in the full knowledge of the cost and in the judgment that the cost was worth paying. The cave is still there. The water still rises in the monsoon season, and the passages are still dark and cold and unforgiving. Somewhere in that mountain, in the particular darkness that Saman Kunan moved through on his last night, the water flows through the passages it has always flowed through. It does not remember him. The world does.